I have many disagreements with The Hill Rising, this new media show on YouTube that's really technically corporate media since it is produced by The Hill. I've talked about some of the disagreements I've had with Krystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty, the host of the show. One of the biggest issues that I have with the show at this moment is their obsession with this election. Just like many other people in new media and of course the mainstream media, obsessing about every single poll that comes out. I mean, goddamn, for months they've been doing segments about polls that ultimately mean nothing, and putting all this time and energy into this content that is basically useless the very next time that poll comes out. So I mean, this is a real issue I have with new media, and maybe with The Hill specifically, they're pushing them to cover the poll so much. I don't know exactly what it is, but that shit irks me, especially now with so much going on, that people would waste time, one, obsessing about the election, like I said, and two, obsessing about the polls. For all my disagreements that I have with The Hill, I do think that it is they do important work in new media. For them being technically corporate media, there is a focus on working class economics that you don't really see anywhere else. Honestly, even more than the quote biggest progressive online news outlet, the Young Turks. And that is something I always give them credit for. They have amazing guests on this issue that you really don't find anywhere else, but are some of the most prominent people in left-wing economics, whether it's journalists or just like regular economists, MMT economists. And during this economic collapse from the beginning, they have been laser focused on how this is affecting the working class. And with the size of the platform that they have, I think that's incredibly important because, like I said, there aren't many people doing that. Her and Sagar had a conversation about how there really are two separate economies working right now in the United States. The top 20% are doing exceptionally well. They're doing better than they've ever done at any point in history. And the bottom 70%, bottom 80% is facing unprecedented calamity. And so they had this is one of the many conversations they've had about this topic on their show. And I have the clip for you. It's about 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. And the way they tied what's happening now into how the response to the 2008 crash went down it was masterful and better than I could do. So I have the clip. I'll show it to you, and then I'll break it down when we come back.
One moment that led to Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, by the way.
Of course.
It is that financial collapse and the failure to rescue the American working and middle class and homeowners in particular. The fact that everybody just went back to normal, bailed out Wall Street, CEOs, all the executives, they started getting their bonuses back again. Right. No one goes to prison, and they act like everything's fine and we brought the economy back and it's all wonderful and great. And the reality is then, I don't think we had the language for it, but it was a K-shaped recovery too.
Exactly.
I mean,
it literally
exact
was K-shaped.
Same thing. I mean, the majority of jobs that were lost in the Great Recession were middle-class jobs. The majority of jobs that were gained out of it were low-income jobs. And that has set us on the trajectory to where we find ourselves today. And what are we doing once again, in maybe an even more remarkable fashion, creating this completely divided economy where you have, 20, 30% doing just fine, and everybody else who's basically their delivery drivers, just like you said. It is absolutely unconscionable, insane. And it also makes me realize, when that first CARES Act passed, we said, this is it. This is your chance to get it right. And it was done so quickly, and they bundled in all the business provisions and they packaged it all together so that, they could put pressure on any progressives out there to say basically, or any populists out there to say basically like, well, you can't hold up aid for workers.
That's what they did to the Republicans.
So you got to go along with this because you can't hold up aid for workers. And there were pieces of it that at least were better than nothing. The $600 unemployment insurance that has now gone down to basically nothing and is basically gone, that was actually effective. But we knew at the time that the structure of the thing was rotten, that it did not have the longevity, that it did not automatically renew, that it didn't have the certainty and the stability that was built into it that many other developed world countries, which ended up, by the way, spending less on their stimulus.
Yeah, right.
But for much more effective response, it didn't have all of that. And so it makes me go back to that original vote on that CARES Act, because we knew that they were not going to go back to the well. We knew that it was, and they didn't ultimately. And so, as we said yesterday, they're still doing this sort of like theater around, we're negotiating and maybe they're not coming to a deal. All that they're doing now is trying to posture on who gets the blame. And that's the reality of the situation we're in. And the ramifications are going to be huge, long-lasting, and I think transform the American economy and American politics forever.
It literally will be that flip dynamic where if Biden wins, they're going to be like, look, we passed this historic recovery. And then the Republicans will be like, no, actually, the recovery is because of Donald Trump's recovery and the CARES package. And then if it flips or if there's blame, it'll be the opposite, right? They'll be like, no, actually, it was the Democrats who passed this and it's the Republicans who are here to blame. Nobody actually wants to do anything for you. Nobody actually wants to do anything about what is happening. I am nearly certain we will have a mass homelessness crisis within like a year just because of the eviction moratorium.
Yeah.
And I have no confidence, zero, that they will bail people out.
They won't.
None. And I mean, and the back rent, whenever it comes to paid utility, and let's say even if they miraculously do something on rent, you think they're going to do anything on utility bills or car pay? There are just too many lost expenses out there, and bills got to come due for somebody. And then what's going to happen is that smaller businesses and others will go bankrupt. Even smaller landlords, maybe they'll get bought out by a commercial real estate firm, and everything's going to get rolled up even more to Wall Street and finance. You will have zero agency and control in your life, but. Look, I know this is really depressing, and I'm sorry, but that's just the dynamics that I see. And like I said, the only hope is that last time it all happened, it came crashing down in 2008. Well, not crashing, but it came crashing through, or in 2016. Maybe it'll take another 8 years, but it's going to happen. People like us are going to be out there at least pointing out what the reality is. And eventually, the bill will come due for the establishment, too.
I hope that's right.
So the point she makes about the K-shaped recovery, which is like I said, top 30%, top 20% doing exceptionally well, recovering great, but doing better than they ever have before, and the bottom 70%, 80% of the country in calamity. She describes it as it's not like this K-shaped recovery just started with this current economic collapse that came as hand in hand with the coronavirus. This is a trajectory that has been set in place. The die was cast back in 2008 when shit went off the rails. Millions of well-paying middle-class jobs with benefits were lost, and then they were replaced with, for the people who were able to get jobs again after that, those jobs were replaced with low-wage jobs, working in retail, working in a restaurant, working customer service at call centers or whatever it is. That's what people had to do to keep the lights on, to keep food on the table. And the government, after they let the executives at Wall Street who crashed the economy through their own fraud, after they bailed them out with blank checks, gave them a pass, none of them were prosecuted. After they did that, instead of bailing out the people too, they looked at the people getting these, like I said, those decent paying middle class jobs that were erased, gone. They saw them being replaced with low-wage jobs, and they said, oh, look at that, job creation, everything's just fine, right? So we don't have to do anything. We don't have to bail out the people. We don't have to do a broad and sweeping economic approach. Everything's fine. They got the low-wage job, so there's nothing to worry about. And since 2008, they let this problem continue to fester. This unprecedented wealth inequality, the lack of job opportunities, not only for the people who lost their jobs, but for the people who were just graduating and just entering the job market. They said that we're not going to do anything for you. And so we were on this trajectory since 2008. And then here we are again, another crash. This time, this economic collapse is like nothing we've ever seen before. And it's compounded on top of the unaddressed issues that have been building up, economic issues that have been building up since 2008 in the economic crash. And I think that's that is the best way to look at what's happening. Because like how they did in 2008, they're already now acting like, oh, we did enough and whatever happens, happens. And we're not really going to do anything else to help the American people. So while people are asking for relief for the current economic crisis, which they should be, the $2,000 monthly payment and all that stuff, rent and debt cancellation, all these economic policies that we're asking for now, not only are they deserved and required to deal with a current crisis, we are owed this from back when they left us high and dry after the 2008 crash. So we're 2 economic calamities in, and the government has still decided that they're hell-bent on leaving the public for dead. They will not have a broad, wide-reaching economic response. They will not have jobs programs like in a Green New Deal. They will not bail out the people. They will not provide the most basic economic relief. They will not provide healthcare, even though a lot of these things should have been done back in 2008. And now there's another economic calamity that we've never seen before, compounded on top of that. And like I said with the lead-in to this segment, Krystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty, they have been dead on correct about how this was going to play out from the beginning. When they tried to ram the CARES Act down our throats and said, we have no choice, we have to do this. We have to do this right now. It's an emergency. We don't even have time to think about it. Let's give unprecedented $1 trillion bailouts to corporations. And yeah, we got a little scraps for people. But come on, we're going to come back and we're going to deal with it. We all knew that was bullshit. We all knew they were trying to get one over on us when they were trying to rush through the CARES Act and they were trying to get these votes in the House. They did it with absolutely no accountability. They did a voice vote. It wasn't even a recorded vote in the House. And they did all this and they were trying to tell us, oh no, we just have to do it real fast because it's such an emergency. You have to get this $1,200 checks out to people. When we said AOC and the Justice Democrats and Bernie Sanders and all these so-called left politicians, these progressives in the House and the Senate, they need to do everything they can to stop this and restructure this in a way that bails out the people before they bail out the corporations. When we said that, we were maligned and talked down to and said, you guys don't know how the real world works, and they have to do something now to get to to help the American people. And if they have to go along with this shitty corporate bailout, then so be it. But, we have time in the future to come back and address whatever issues we have to address. No, all of the leverage was in the CARES Act. And once the corporate Democrats and the corporate Republicans, the establishment got what they wanted, their bailout for the corporations and the bailout for the rich, they had no incentive to do anything else for the American people. No rent and debt cancellation, no UBI, no Medicare for all, nothing. And 6 months later, we've been proven correct every single day that has passed, and they've done nothing. Still to this day, 40 million people are on the brink of evictions. Donald Trump temporarily suspended the eviction, so he delayed it, at least to the end of the year. But there is going to be a day of reckoning when the eviction moratoriums expire and evictions are allowed again in this country. And those 40 million people are on the chopping block. And I promise you, when that day comes, there would still be no comprehensive economic package to deal with that crisis. So we said this was going to happen. Credit to Krystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty, because more than anybody else with such a big platform, definitely way more than any other corporate media entity. They were sounding the alarm that if they don't do it right, if they rush through this corporate bailout, it's going to be exactly like 2008. Or really, it was before Obama even came into office, when they passed TARP and another piece of emergency legislation to deal with the financial crash. When they did that, and they didn't include a bailout for the American people, that was a mistake. Because once they did that, corporations were fine. The government already made the decision that they were going to do everything in their power to stabilize the markets for the corporations. But no mention of what they were going to do for the American people. And then months went by, years went by, and then it just looked like, oh, so everybody's just going to ignore the economic calamity for the entire working class and lower class in this country. So we're just going to ignore that and not legislate on that at all. Democrats came in, Obama came in, supermajority, had the House, had the Senate, had the White House. Nothing to address the economic calamity that was going on in the country, that K-shaped recovery. And then here we are today, the same thing playing out, but on a scale that's even more absurd and unimaginable. And they trotted out the same playbook. Bail out the corporations real fast, give a little crumbs to the American people so that they don't bring out the pitchforks and torches at the insane lengths that we're going to bail out corporations and the rich. And then after that, we're going to leave everybody high and dry. We're going to leave them for dead, and whatever happens, happens. And like they said, like Krystal and Sagar said, the top 20, top 30% of the country, they'll do just fine. They'll be doing better than they ever were. And everybody else is just going to be their delivery drivers. That's the decision that our government made. And the one area of disagreement I'd have with Krystal and Sagar in this clip would be that the way they talk about it is almost as if doing nothing is an option at this point. As if people are going to lay down and roll over while 40% of all small businesses close, while 60 million people have no income. And they're just going to wait around for another election to hopefully elect somebody to maybe not come up with economic policies to help them. I don't think that option's on the table. And this is where Krystal, Ball, and Sagar and Jetty's financial situation may cloud their judgment a little bit, because they don't know how desperate people are in this country. And this is so many times worse than what happened in 2008. And the ramifications are so wide reaching that people aren't going to just sit down and wait around for a government response that we all know isn't going to come. They pulled one over on us back in 2008 when they had Obama running as this lefty, and he was going to be this historic candidate. And if he comes in as president, we're going to have the first black president, and that means he's going to look out for the working class. That's what a lot of people thought. So that put the torches at bay in 2008, and then those same people, a lot of people on the left, like has been discussed before, a lot of the left went to sleep and they thought Obama was going to take care of it, so they have nothing to worry about. So people gave him space and they were hoping that the Obama administration was working on their behalf. Then a year went by, and 2 years went by, 3 years went by, his first term went by, and people realized, oh, so he isn't going to do anything to help us. And some people were still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt all the way up to the end of his term. And Joe Biden is not going to get that kind of reprieve if he's president. Donald Trump will not get that kind of reprieve. There's going to be a price to pay for the way that they fleeced the American public and left them hanging and told them to go kick rocks in this unprecedented crisis. And I don't know how it's going to play out, but I can guarantee you, when 40 million people get thrown out of their house, maybe it's not all 40 million people, maybe it's 20 million people, maybe it's 10 million people. That is multiple times higher than the homeless population has ever been in this country. And for all that amount of people to get kicked out at the same time, that is going to spark some unrest that we've never seen before. When 60 million people can't put food on the table for their kids, and there are no jobs, 40% of all small businesses closed. The economy has forever been changed. And when those people, when all the whatever little money they have left from the unemployment checks run out, and they are out of options, people are going to get unruly and uncontrollable. That's when shit is really going to hit the fan. So, like I said, they're talking about it as if people are just going to sit around and wait for another election. That isn't the case. That's not. People aren't even going to sit around and wait for the midterms. There's going to be pressure. Hopefully, there's two ways I see this playing out. Unprecedented, massive public pressure campaign, more organized than what's going on right now, and even bigger in numbers than what's going on right now with these protests against police brutality. And they're going to demand economic policies to help out the American people. Put the fear of God into politicians. Go to their homes and go to their offices and shut down cities and make sure business as usual cannot continue until we get these policies. That's the best case scenario, and that's what I'm hoping for. Or there's just going to be riots like we've never seen before. People, thousands of people at a time, are going to run up and raid grocery stores because they have no other option to feed their families. And there will be fires in cities, and there'll be all these broken... It will look like a war zone in this country. And that would be a choice that the politicians made. That is the decision that they made every single day that they let pass for the last 6 months without bailing out the American people. So I really cannot even process what's going on. Like she said about the 2008 crash, we didn't have the language to describe it. We don't have the language to describe what's going on right now either. But I'm telling you, there's going to be a shock to the system, even bigger than what we're already dealing with. There is going to be a reckoning, and I just hope it goes in a more productive direction rather than a destructive direction.